Hello and thank you for joining me today. We're going to be doing a very quick and easy little sunset or sunrise, depending on which you prefer. And this is completely out of the imagination, but I just wanted to show you this little tip about using a coin to make either your sun or your moon. So very simple idea for beginners, and just thought it'd be something that you could have a go at home quite quickly. So I'm using the Sennelier travel set of watercolours that I bought a few weeks ago. I did do a review on these. If you didn't see that, I'll pop it up in the link here. And I'm using, let me think, phthalo blue, which I've added a touch of orange to, just to take the edge off it. So orange is on the opposite side of the colour wheel to blue. So if something's a little bit too bright or unrealistic, you add the colour from the opposite side of the colour wheel and that will just tone it down a little. And that's also a good idea when you want to use shadow colours. So that was the phthalo blue and the orange. The next mix we've got here is French vermilion with alizarin crimson added. And then we've got lemon yellow. But you could have a really good play with your colours with sunsets and sunrises. There's so many colours in there. You could try different blues, maybe some purples, some different reds and yellows and oranges. So just have a bit of fun with your colours and mix a few different ones up, whatever you've got at home. Okay, so to begin with, I've got the Fabriano pad. So this was the cold press one and it's £140. It's just a small little pad, but it's quite a handy size. And I've got a little tin of pencils there that I'm using as a prop, so that when we do the sky and then we do the water, it doesn't flow back up to the sky, that everything's coming down the pad. Okay, now so to begin with, we must remember that water always lies flat. Obviously gravity makes water lie flat, so if you're drawing a body of water, either a lake, a river, a canal, whatever it is, it must always lie flat, otherwise it looks really wrong to the eye and people will pick it up immediately, because water cannot be anything other than flat. So I've measured down so that we've got the same, measured from the top of the page, so that I know that I've got a nice flat line for my horizon. Now you'll see that this isn't in the middle of the book, because that would be a boring composition to do it completely central, make a very boring picture. Usually we do either 2/3 of sky and 1/3 of sea, or the other way around, but not in the middle, wherever you choose it to do. Okay, so I'll pop that to one side, and that's the only drawing that we're going to do, just that one line. So to begin with, you're going to need a nice big brush. Mine's a 1-inch flat brush. This is going to depend on the size of your paper. You might need an even bigger brush if you're going to do it on a much bigger piece of paper. Now it's quite a warm day today, so I'm going to put plenty of water on, but we want it to be damp. We don't want it to be dripping. Crisscross, so you make sure that you get into all those grooves of the paper as well, and come right down into the sea as well as the sky. And if it does start to dry, we can come back and re-wet it. So just go over it a few times, make sure the whole thing's covered. Tilt your head to one side, and if there's any matte areas, you'll see that they're not shining. That's where you've missed the paper. Okay, so that's pretty well covered now, and I'm not going to let it dry too much because of the weather today. Normally you might want to just let it sink into the paper a little bit more. So I'm going to fill my brush with the blue. I'm going to start at the left hand side and go all the way across quite firmly, with plenty of pressure on the brush, so that we don't run out of paint before we get to the end. And because it's a small pad, we're not going to. So it's a good way for beginners to start, is to use a smallish pad, so that you're not running out of watercolour by the time you get to the end of that paper. Okay, so that's enough for the sky. For the blue rather, not for the sky. We've not finished the sky yet, and we'll go on to the red. So make sure your brush is dry before you fill it up with your next lot of paint, because those paints need to be the similar consistency, and if your brush is wet, you're adding more water to the mix. And we'll touch it, allow those two colours to touch so that they flow into each other, and then I'll do the same again, dry it off a little, fill the brush with yellow. And I'm going to just go sideways with my brush now, because I don't want that yellow to come too much into the sea, because it will tend to make green. So don't put your yellow up here where it's touching the blue, because then we'll go into making green colours which will look wrong. You can get green in the sea, but you're not going to have green in the sky. Can you see here where we've got quite a lot of water at the edge? Just lift that off with a dry brush before you carry on. So it's a good habit to get into, drying your brush off in between. Now if you just get a clean piece of kitchen roll, whilst it's still wet, and this has to be done whilst it's still wet, pop your coin in the centre of your kitchen roll and wrap it around. And obviously it needs to be a round coin, not one of these hexagonal ones like the pound coins. It wants to be a 2 or a 5 even, or a 10. A 10's quite a good size, I think. So you want the sun or the moon, well the sun really, isn't it, if it's popping up over the horizon, to be only halfway over the horizon. You don't want it to be fully over. Okay, so that gives us a nice, quick and easy sun. And then we just need to carry on and finish the water. I mean, at this stage, if you wanted to, you could add some clouds in, you could add some extra colour into here. So, for instance, if you've got a much thicker mix of the yellow, I'll just get some with a lot less water in it. Whilst it's still very wet, you could put some extra colour in if you wanted to brighten it up a bit nearer to the sun, because obviously it's going to be brighter nearer, and just leave that to flow into the other colours there. And also a bit more red if you wanted to pop a bit more red in to make it even more fiery. And then leave it, don't be fiddling around with it too much. Okay, so now we need to carry on and do the water. So same thing again, fill your brush up with the blue. So we really do need to have all your paint, enough paint made up to begin with, and that's one of the tricks with watercolour, is to make sure that you've got that paint there ready. Just come down slightly from the horizon in case it does flow back. It shouldn't be too bad because we've got that little tilt on. Make sure that that blue goes up to the horizon line there. And of course those colours will be coming down into the sea because they're reflecting. So all the way across. Now can you see how we've got a dry line here? That's because the paper's obviously drying very quickly in this heat. So just go over that. Plenty of pressure on your brush so that we get a nice mix all the way across. Okay, now you could leave it at that, it's quite pretty as it is, but what I'm going to do is I've made, I'll just turn this around, I've made some more of the blue, but you can probably tell by looking at it that this has got a lot less water in it and it's a much thicker mix, and perhaps a little bit more of that orange in it. And I'm just going to use that to make some horizontal lines down either side and vary the amount that they come out. And again, this goes back to the thing that water lies flat and it should be horizontal. Make nice, bold, long strokes with your brush. And that's just giving us that impression that it's darker off to the edges. Just put a bit more in because the sun is lighting up this centre. I don't actually like these bottom lines. Like I said, this paper down at the bottom is drying quite quickly, so I'll just get that bit of tissue we had for doing the sun and take some of that out. And you could make a few lines in with your tissue as well, as if we've got the sun just catching on those waves. Not really waves, it's very still looking, isn't it? And just makes it a bit more interesting if we put one or two little lighter areas in. Okay, so very simple and very quick, but it's something that you could play with as you go on. So when you're working wet in wet, make sure that you always add a higher concentration of paint with less water into your next layer. Otherwise you're going to get those cauliflower shapes. Also make sure you tilt your board. Can you see, even though we've got it tilted, we've still got this water going back up a little bit towards the horizon. You will be able to rub that line out, that pencil line. I've made it quite a thick line so it showed up to the camera. If you do it very faintly and then afterwards erase it once it's completely dry. Another thing you could do once it's completely dry is put a little boat in it, but don't forget you'll need a shadow. So think about if the sun's here and you pop a boat there, you're going to need some shadows going down, some lines of the water beneath the boat where it's obviously going to be causing a ripple. Anything that you want to take out, if it's, you know, you need a bit of extra sunshine or anything, you need to do that whilst it's still wet, or clouds or anything like that. What you could also have done was, like we did here with the darker colour, you could have made it darker at the top. In fact, we'll do that now. We'll put another layer of blue over, because this is pretty dry. It's not 100% dry, but it's pretty dry, because quite often, depending on the time of the day, it's going to be darker further up. So we'll do 2 nice lines. Again, making sure your brush is full of water, sorry, full of paint should I say. Dry it off and then soften this bottom line with the damp brush so that that blends in, and as that dries that's going to blend in to the paint that's already there. Let's just do that a bit again. It's just, this is partly because it's drying so quick. Can you see that's blending a little better? But don't add more water to the sky there. You just want to be adding that little bit of paint and blending it in. You don't want any cauliflowers. I don't really advise going back into your sky. That's something that you could have done at the start. Make it darker at the top and then gradually work it down by adding more water as you come down the sky. In fact, I'm going to come a little bit further down with some more watery paint, because I'm not happy with that. That's better. Okay, so I hope you found that useful. Like I say, it's something you can have a bit of a play with. Use different colours, use different strengths of paint, and just perhaps do it over and over again. It'll just get you used to the amount of paint that you need, the amount of pigment and the amount of water that you need to make these washes, and see how they react with each other, and watch them as well, because as they're drying they're still moving. These colours are still fading. You know, if you think how bright that red was when we put it on and how faded it looks now, it makes you realise how strong you need to put it on in the first place. And when it's completely dry you could also put glazes over it as well. So there are all sorts of things you can play out with that, but the main thing that I wanted to show you today was the using the coin. Okay, so I hope you found that useful. I'll be back again soon with some more watercolour tutorials as well as other mediums. If there's anything particular that you want me to show you, if you want to put that in the comments below, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.